You want to hear about the day I found out my sweet, church-going daughter-in-law was living a double life? Pull up that chair, honey, because this story is wilder than anything you've seen on those Netflix shows. It started on a Wednesday morning, September 3rd, I'll never forget it, when I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Margaret Chen?" a woman's voice asked. She sounded nervous, almost scared. "Yes, this is she." "Who's calling?" "Mrs. Chen, my name is Amanda Price. I'm your son David's wife." Now, I almost dropped that phone. My son David had been married to Rachel for 12 years. They had 2 beautiful children, Emma, age 10, and Jack, age 7. I saw Rachel every Sunday at church. We had dinner together every Friday night. So you can imagine my confusion. "Ma'am, I think you have the wrong number," I said carefully. "My son's wife is named Rachel." There was a long pause. Then, "Mrs. Chen, I've been married to David for 8 years. We have a 5-year-old daughter named Sophie. And until 3 days ago, I had no idea Rachel existed either." I felt the room start spinning. The woman on the phone, Amanda, told me she'd found plane tickets in David's jacket pocket. Tickets to our city, dated for every other weekend for the past 8 years. When she'd confronted him, he'd broken down and confessed everything. My son, my baby boy who I'd raised to be honest and good, had been living 2 completely separate lives. One week he was David Chen, accountant, married to Rachel, living in our town, coaching Little League. The next week he was David Price, financial consultant, married to Amanda, living 3 states away in Colorado. 2 wives, 3 children, 2 complete lives. I hung up with Amanda and immediately called David. He answered on the first ring. "Mom," he said, and his voice was so hollow, so defeated. "I guess you know. You get over to my house right now," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Right now, David." He showed up 20 minutes later, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. And that's when he told me the story that I still can't fully wrap my head around. It had started innocently enough, he said. 12 years ago he'd married Rachel, his high school sweetheart. They were happy at first, but then Rachel had a difficult pregnancy with Emma. She developed postpartum depression, and their marriage got rocky. Instead of working through it, David took a work trip to Colorado. That's where he met Amanda at a hotel bar. One night turned into a weekend. A weekend turned into a long-distance relationship. And then, in a moment of absolute insanity, when Amanda got pregnant, David didn't end things. He married her. Told her he was a consultant who traveled for work. Told Rachel he'd gotten a promotion that required frequent travel. "How?" I asked him, my voice barely a whisper. "How did you keep this up for 8 years?" He explained his system like he was describing a work project. He'd created separate bank accounts, separate credit cards, separate phone lines. He told Amanda his company was based in our state, which is why he had to travel back every other week. He told Rachel he had clients in Colorado. He'd coordinate his schedules so carefully that neither woman ever suspected. "But David," I said, tears streaming down my face, "what about the children? Emma and Jack think you're their full-time father. And this little girl, Sophie." "I love all of them, Mom," he said, and he was crying too. "I love all 3 of my kids. I love both Rachel and Amanda. I know it's wrong, I know it's insane, but I couldn't give any of them up. So I just kept going, kept juggling, kept lying." I slapped him. My own son, and I slapped him right across the face. "You need to tell Rachel," I said. "Today. Right now." But here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected. Not even me. When David went home to confess to Rachel, she wasn't there. The house was empty except for a note on the kitchen table. David called me, panicking, and read it to me over the phone. "David, I know about Amanda. I've known for 3 years. We need to talk, but not here. Meet me at your mother's house at 6 p.m. Bring your mother. This involves her too." 3 years. Rachel had known for 3 years and said nothing. At 6 o'clock sharp, my living room became the setting for the most bizarre conversation of my life. Rachel showed up first, calm and collected, looking nothing like a betrayed wife should look. Then David arrived, pale and shaking. And then, God help me, the doorbell rang again and it was Amanda, holding little Sophie's hand. "What is she doing here?" David stammered. "I invited her," Rachel said simply. "We've been talking." Turns out, Rachel had discovered the truth 3 years earlier when she'd found a birthday card from Sophie in David's suitcase. Instead of confronting him, she'd done something extraordinary. She'd tracked down Amanda and contacted her. "At first, I wanted to destroy her," Rachel said, looking at Amanda with something that wasn't quite friendship but wasn't hate either. "I wanted to call her and tell her what a liar and fraud David was. But when I looked her up on social media and saw her with Sophie, saw how happy she looked, how much that little girl looked like Emma and Jack, I couldn't do it." So Rachel had flown to Colorado and showed up at Amanda's door. And instead of fighting, instead of destroying each other, these two women had sat down and talked. They discovered they had a lot in common. Both teachers, both loved hiking, both had the same taste in books and movies. They'd realized that they weren't enemies. David was the problem, not each other. "We've been friends for 3 years, Amanda said quietly, glancing at Rachel. "We talk on the phone twice a week. Our kids have played together on video calls. They think they're cousins. We've been planning what to do when the truth finally came out." David looked like he might faint. "You've known for 3 years. Both of you." "We wanted to wait until Sophie was old enough to understand," Rachel said. "And until we had a solid plan." And then they laid out their plan, and honey, this is the part that still makes my jaw drop. Rachel and Amanda weren't leaving David. They were restructuring everything. They'd consulted with lawyers and therapists. They'd decided that while they couldn't forgive David's deception, they also couldn't ignore that he was the father of their children and that, incredibly, he had actually been present and loving to all 3 kids. He'd never missed a birthday, never forgotten a school event, never been an absent father to anyone. "He's a terrible husband," Amanda said, "but he's actually a good father." Their solution. David would move to a house exactly halfway between our town and Colorado, about a 3-hour drive from each location. Rachel and Amanda would divorce him, but share custody. The children would spend alternating weeks with each mother, and weekends with David. Rachel and Amanda would sell both houses and buy properties near each other in a town called Greenfield, right between both locations. "We're not a throuple," Rachel clarified, seeing my shocked expression. "Amanda and I aren't together romantically, but we are family now. Our children are siblings, and they deserve to know each other. David needs to face the consequences of his actions, but those consequences shouldn't include destroying his children's lives." Over the next 6 months, they did exactly what they'd planned. The legal system was baffled. Judges had never seen anything like it. The therapists were fascinated. And the children. Emma and Jack were confused at first, then angry, then eventually accepting when they met Sophie and realized they had a little sister. Sophie was young enough that she adjusted quickly. The 3 kids became inseparable. David lost both his wives but gained a strict custody schedule and mandatory therapy 3 times a week. He had to liquidate his savings to buy his house and pay for the lawyers. He became the cautionary tale of our entire community. But here's the final twist that nobody saw coming. About a year after everything came out, Rachel started dating someone, a nice man named Thomas who owned a bookstore in Greenfield. 6 months later, Amanda started seeing someone too, a woman named Claire who taught at the same school as Amanda. One Sunday, I drove out to Greenfield to visit. I walked into Rachel's house and found the most unusual scene. Rachel and Thomas were cooking dinner. Amanda and Claire were setting the table. David was helping Emma with homework while Jack and Sophie played video games. It was chaos and laughter and something that looked almost like a family. "Mom," David said when he saw my expression, "I know it's weird." "Weird doesn't begin to cover it, son." Rachel came over and put her hand on my shoulder. "Margaret, I know this isn't conventional, but those kids in there, they're thriving. They have 2 mothers who support each other, a father who's finally being honest and working on himself, and an extended family that loves them. It's not the family any of us planned, but it's the family we've built. Amanda nodded. And honestly, Mrs. Chen, Rachel is my best friend now. We talk every day. We help each other parent. We've been through something together that no one else could understand. David brought us together in the worst way possible, but we've created something good from it. That was 2 years ago. Today Emma is 12, Jack is 9, and Sophie is 7. They split their time between their mother's houses, and they spend weekends with David. Rachel and Thomas got married last spring. David walked Rachel down the aisle because that's what she wanted. Amanda and Claire are talking about getting married next year. The kids call themselves the Blended Bunch, and have a YouTube channel where they talk about having an unusual family structure. It's got over 2 million subscribers. Turns out there are a lot of blended families out there looking for representation. David is in therapy and will be for the rest of his life. He lost his wives, his reputation, and his pride. But he gained something unexpected. A co-parenting relationship with 2 women who refused to let his mistakes define their children's futures. As for me, I learned something important. Sometimes the most unconventional solutions are the ones that work best. Life isn't a fairy tale with clear villains and heroes. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes the people we think we know best are complete strangers. Shakes her head with a slight smile. My son betrayed 2 women and created chaos. But those 2 women took that chaos and turned it into something functional, something healthy for their kids. They refused to let hate and anger define them. They chose cooperation over destruction. I'm not saying what David did was okay. It wasn't. It was selfish and cruel and inexcusable. But I'm saying that Rachel and Amanda showed more strength and wisdom than anyone I've ever met. They looked at an impossible situation and asked themselves, what's best for the children? And then they did that, even though it was hard, even though it was unconventional, even though every bone in their bodies probably wanted revenge. Takes a sip of coffee. So that's my story about the day I found out my son had 2 wives. Not the ending anyone expected, but maybe the ending everyone needed. And you know what? This Thanksgiving we're all having dinner together. Both families, 1 table. If you told me 5 years ago that I'd be passing gravy to my son's ex-wife's new husband while his other ex-wife's girlfriend carved the turkey, I'd have said you were crazy. But life's funny that way. Sometimes the most broken things create the most beautiful mosaics. Leans back with a thoughtful expression. Now, you remember this story next time you think your family is complicated. Trust me, honey, it could always be more complicated. But with enough grace, forgiveness, and focus on what really matters, even the messiest situations can work out. Just maybe don't live a double life like my idiot son. That part. Don't do that part.